To my son, who finally found a woman so desperate she'd agree to marry him. My father said it with a raised crystal glass and a smile wide enough to pass for pride. 60 guests turned toward me at once. The silence that followed wasn't polite. It wasn't confused. It was the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. The kind where you can hear someone's breath catch 3 tables away. My fiancée's fingers tightened around mine under the linen tablecloth. I felt her chair shift. She was about to stand. I squeezed once. Stay. I didn't laugh. I didn't argue. I didn't flinch. I stood up slowly. The Whitmore Hall had marble floors and brass chandeliers. The kind of venue my father reserved for corporate fundraisers and contract announcements. Tonight, it was dressed up as my engagement party. Candles flickered along 60-place settings. His business partners filled the front tables. My friends were seated near the back by the service doors. My father was still holding his glass in the air, waiting for someone to join him. No one did. I walked to the front of the room without looking at him. Calm, measured. The same way I walk into a client meeting when the numbers are about to ruin someone's career. My laptop bag was under the AV table. I had brought it to send a Monday morning audit file before dinner. Practical, unrelated, or so I thought. Behind me, I heard a chair scrape sharply against marble. My father's business partner of 15 years, Thomas Hale, had gone pale. His champagne flute slipped from his hand. It hit the floor and shattered. The crack echoed off the walls. For a second, that was the only sound in the room, glass breaking. Tiny fractures spreading across polished stone. And I remember thinking, that's it. That's the sound of something collapsing. But this story doesn't start at my engagement party. It starts 3 months earlier. The night I found something in my father's books that I was never meant to see. My name is Daniel Whitmore. I'm 31 years old. I'm a certified forensic accountant, a fraud examiner. The kind of person companies hire when money starts disappearing and no one wants to admit it out loud. I follow paper trails for a living. I trace patterns. I don't guess. I prove. And before I take you back to how this started, I want to say something quickly. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever sat at a table where someone made you smaller so they could feel bigger, take a second to subscribe. Drop your city and the local time in the comments. I read them. It reminds me how far these stories travel. Now, let me take you back to October. The night my father called me a liability in front of 6 contractors and laughed like it was a compliment. My father, Charles Whitmore, built Whitmore and Hale Contracting from nothing. That's the family legend. A pickup truck, a handshake loan, 17-hour days. By the time I was born, the company had 12 employees, a fleet of branded trucks, and a reputation that made people stand straighter when he entered a room. In our town, my father wasn't just a contractor. He was a self-made man, Rotary Club speaker, country club donor, the guy who bought drinks for the bar and made sure everyone knew it. Publicly, he was admired. Privately, he was precise. He didn't yell much. He didn't need to. He had a voice that could reduce you without ever rising above conversational volume. I was 10 the first time I remember understanding the pattern. 5th grade. Straight A's. Teachers note Daniel is focused, disciplined, and shows leadership potential. I placed the report card on the kitchen counter like it was evidence in a trial. He glanced at it for maybe 3 seconds. Grades don't mean you're smart, he said. They mean you're compliant. Teachers reward boys who don't make waves. My mother stood at the sink, drying a plate. She didn't look up. That was the system. He cut. She watched. I bled quietly. What made it confusing, what kept me chasing approval for years, was that he wasn't cruel every day. When I was 13, he took me to a construction site on a Saturday, handed me a hard hat too big for my head, and said, "Watch how this works." At the end of the day, in front of 2 foremen, he clapped my shoulder and said, "That's my boy." I held on to those 3 words like oxygen. It took me a decade to realize he'd only ever said them with an audience. The older I got, the sharper the pattern became. In high school, when I made varsity soccer, he told the other parents I'd inherited his work ethic. When I missed a penalty kick the following season, he told me in the truck on the way home, "Leaders don't choke." College was accounting and criminal justice, not construction, not the family business. He didn't fight it outright. That would have been too obvious. Instead, he reframed it. At least someone in this family will understand numbers. He'd joke at barbecues. God knows it won't be the guy running the company. People laughed. I laughed. At my college graduation dinner, a steakhouse I couldn't afford. But he insisted on choosing. He spent 45 minutes explaining municipal bidding contracts to my friends. When the check came, he leaned back in his chair and said loud enough for the table to hear well, "Daniel, let's hope that degree makes you useful someday." Everyone laughed, because that's what you do when a man like my father makes a joke. You laugh. A year later, I landed a position at a respected forensic accounting firm in Baltimore. Competitive hire. Hard-earned. I called home. My mother said, "Congratulations." My father got on the line and said, "Try not to bankrupt them." I laughed. Hung up. Sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. The worst part, I thought it was normal. When criticism is constant but subtle, it rewires you. You stop questioning it. You assume love sounds like evaluation. You assume support feels like a test you haven't passed yet. And every time he diminished me in public, he did it with a smile, wrapped in humor, disguised as mentorship. Daniel's still figuring it out. He's book smart. He'll get there eventually. Cruelty, dressed as charm. And my mother, she never contradicted him. Not once in 30 years. I didn't know it then. But that silence would matter later. Because silence doesn't just protect the aggressor. It trains the target. I met Claire Bennett at a legal financial compliance conference in Baltimore. She was a corporate litigation attorney presenting on fiduciary duty breaches. I was 3 rows back taking notes. Already aware she was the only person in the room, not trying to impress anyone. Claire didn't perform. She didn't posture. She didn't fill silence just to hear herself speak. She was steady. After her panel, I asked a question about evidentiary thresholds in partnership fraud cases. She answered without theatrics. Clean, precise. Then she asked what firm I worked for. We ended up arguing politely about reporting obligations over stale conference coffee. We had dinner that night. On our 3rd date, I told her a funny story. My father had stood up at my cousin's wedding and joked that if Claire stuck around long enough, she deserved hazard pay. I laughed while telling it. Muscle memory. Claire didn't. She set her fork down slowly and looked at me the way attorneys look at contradictions. "That's not normal," she said. I shrugged. "It's just how he is." She didn't let it go. "Daniel, there's a difference between teasing and undermining." That wasn't teasing. Something shifted in me right then. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just a small internal crack. No one had ever said that before. We dated for 14 months before I brought her home to meet my parents. My father opened the door like he was greeting a potential investor. Handshake. Firm grip. Eye contact too long. Within 3 minutes, he'd turned the living room into an interview. Where did Claire go to school? What was her salary range? Did her parents come from anything substantial? Claire answered calmly. No defensiveness. No ego. Just facts. Then my father leaned back in his chair and said, "I hope you're patient. My son's the analytical type. Not exactly decisive." The air in the room tightened. My mother stared at her teacup. I opened my mouth to respond, but Claire got there first. "With respect," she said evenly, "Daniel is the most disciplined person I know. I wouldn't be here otherwise." No heat. No sarcasm. Just truth. My father didn't argue. He stared at her for 3 long seconds, then pivoted to football. But I saw it, the flicker in his jaw. Claire wasn't intimidated. And my father's authority had always depended on a room being at least a little afraid. Claire never was. That was the beginning of the fracture. She proposed to me in the least dramatic way possible. Sunday morning. Coffee mugs between us. Sunlight through our apartment blinds. "I want a life that feels like this," she said. Quiet. Honest. "With you. Will you marry me?" No audience. No spectacle. Just certainty. I said yes without hesitation. We planned something small. 15. Maybe 20 people. Backyard. String lights. Friends? 2 days later, my father called. "I've booked Whitmore Hall," he said. "Valet. Catering. 60 guests. I'm handling it." Claire looked at me from across the room while I was on the phone. Slow shake of her head. "Dad, we don't need all that," I said. He laughed. "My only son's engagement. I'm not grilling hot dogs." Then my mother called. "Let him do this. Daniel. He's excited." Excited wasn't the word. He was building a stage. And once again, I handed him the microphone. Within a week, the guest list doubled, then tripled. Claire and I had written down 17 names. My father's version had 62. I scrolled through the spreadsheet he forwarded me. Country club members, Rotary board contacts, contractors I'd never met, 2 couples from his golf foursome, a banker, an insurance broker, 3 men I recognized from company holiday cards. My friends 7, they were assigned to table 8, near the service doors. Claire's college roommate and her husband were seated beside the dessert station. Table 1 front and center. Directly across from the podium was reserved for Charles Whitmore, Thomas Hale, and their wives. I called him. Why are Claire's parents at table 6? There wasn't room up front. He said evenly, you have to prioritize relationships that matter. Relationships that matter. This is our engagement party. He exhaled sharply. It's a networking opportunity. Don't be naive. When I hung up, my hands weren't shaking from anger. They were shaking from recognition. The same rearrangement I'd experienced my entire life was happening again, just bigger, louder, more expensive. Claire leaned against the kitchen counter watching me. He's performing, she said. For Hale, for everyone. She wasn't wrong. Whitmore Hall wasn't chosen for sentiment. It was chosen for optics. Exposed brick, brass fixtures, mahogany bar, a projector mounted at the back wall for a curated family slideshow my father had already assembled. Photos he selected, moments he approved. At dinner the night before the party, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off final seating confirmations. My father was in his study, yellow legal pad in front of him, reading glasses low on his nose. What are you writing? I asked. My toast. Can I read it? He smiled, the kind that never reached his eyes. You'll hear it tomorrow, along with everyone else. My chest tightened. It's our engagement party. His voice lowered half a register. Trust me, people will remember this one. My mother appeared in the doorway with a mug of tea. She scanned the room instantly and redirected. Your father always gives wonderful speeches. Honey, I remembered Uncle Greg's retirement dinner. My father joked that Greg was retiring because no one trusted him with responsibility anymore. Everyone laughed. Greg's wife didn't. I left the study without arguing. Claire had suggested earlier, bring your laptop tomorrow. You can finalize that Monday audit file during setup. It was practical advice. Routine. I put the laptop in my trunk that night, without knowing it would become something else entirely. I didn't know my father had spent a week crafting a punchline, and I didn't know it was going to be about me. 3 months before the engagement party, I was working late on a commercial audit for a mid-sized real estate developer flagged for irregular disbursements. Standard procedure. Follow the wire transfers. Reconcile vendor payments. Trace shell entities. I was deep into a chain of LLCs, Delaware registrations. Minimal filings. No employees listed when something snagged. One of the receiving entities had consistent monthly transfers. Clean amounts. Predictable. Just under internal review thresholds. That alone wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the shared registered agent. I ran it again. Cross-referenced. Followed the ownership structure backward through 2 holding companies. 3 layers down. Buried behind paperwork designed to exhaust most auditors. The trail intersected with a familiar name. Whitmore and Hale Contracting. My father's company. I stared at the screen. The office was empty. The cleaning crew's vacuum hummed faintly down the hall. I double-checked the data. Then I triple-checked it. Fraud examiners don't get to assume. We prove. The transfers spanned 10 years. Monthly. Consistent. Destination accounts tied to an entity indirectly controlled by my father. Unauthorized siphoning disguised as vendor payments. My coffee had gone cold. My pulse hadn't. Training kicked in before emotion could. Certified fraud examiners have reporting obligations. If we uncover credible evidence of fraud in the course of our work, we don't ignore it. But this wasn't a random executive. This was my father. I saved the working files, closed the laptop, drove home, sat in my driveway for 12 minutes with the engine off. Then I went inside and opened a new encrypted folder on my personal laptop. I named it Project Atlas. Over the next several weeks, I rebuilt the trail from scratch outside of firm systems. After hours, alone, transaction logs, wire confirmations, LLC cross-filings, internal revenue discrepancies. I wasn't guessing. I was documenting. 2 weeks in, I told Claire, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't carry it alone anymore. I was waking up at 3:12 a.m. every night running numbers in my head. searching for alternative explanations. There weren't any. We sat at our kitchen table. I slid the summary across to her. She read the way attorneys read everything twice. Once for substance, once for liability. When she finished, she didn't say, "Your father's a criminal," she said. "How much based on what I can verify?" 800,000. Minimum. Over a decade. She nodded slowly. "Does Hale know?" Silence stretched between us. "What do you want to do?" she asked. That was the question. Not what should you do. What do you want to do? "He's my father," I said. Claire leaned forward. "He's also stealing from a man who trusts him." Thomas Hale had been his partner for 15 years. Barbecues, golf tournaments, shared speeches about integrity. I stared at the grain of the kitchen table. "My plan," I said finally, "is to finish the full audit package. Monday morning, after the engagement party, I'll request a private meeting with Hale. Face-to-face. Professional. No spectacle. Clean. Ethical. Controlled." Claire studied me. "Okay," she said, "but don't sit on this too long. Truth has weight." I nodded. The laptop went into my bag the night before the party because I had a Monday client deadline anyway. There was no revenge plan, no dramatic reveal blueprint, just a file. Waiting. Saturday evening. Whitmore Hall looked immaculate. Candles down the center of every table. White orchids arranged with architectural precision. A string quartet in the corner playing something soft and expensive. My father didn't do subtle. He did spectacle. Claire and I arrived together. She wore a dark green dress that caught the light when she moved. I wore a navy suit I'd bought specifically for this night, tailored. Understated. The kind of suit that doesn't beg for attention. My father met us at the entrance. "There he is." He boomed. "My only son." He hugged me, held it half a beat, too long, cologne sharp and heavy. Then he turned to Hale and the surrounding guests. Couldn't have done any of this without him. All those years of tuition payments finally paying off. Laughter. It was subtle, but not subtle enough. Dinner began at 7:15. Table 1 was arranged exactly as I'd expected. My father at the head, Hale to his right, my mother to his left, Claire and I directly across from them. As if we were presenting something instead of celebrating. Between the salad and the entree, the story started. The greatest hits. "Did I ever tell you about Daniel's driving test?" he asked, raising his wine glass slightly. "Failed it twice. Said he was analyzing the traffic patterns." Scattered laughter. "And cooking. Don't let the suit fool you. The boy once Googled how to boil water." More laughter. Claire's jaw tightened beside me. My mother smiled into her napkin. Then he leaned forward, lowering his voice theatrically. "And relationships. God help him. Every girlfriend before Claire lasted about 3 months before they figured out he'd need a project manager." The table laughed louder this time. Because when a man like my father frames it as humor, it feels safe to join in. My smile felt mechanical. Autopilot. Across the table. "Mrs. Hale tilted her head slightly. "That's a bit hard on him." "Charles?" she said lightly. My mother responded instantly, reflexively. "Oh, that's just how he shows love." There it was again. The script, cruelty disguised as affection. Claire's hand found mine under the table. Steady pressure. She didn't look at my father. She looked at me. "Breathe," she whispered. The quartet paused at 8:10. Dessert plates were cleared. My father stood up, buttoned his jacket, and tapped his spoon gently against his glass. 3 taps. The room quieted immediately. 60 people trained to listen. I felt something inside me brace. Not fear. Recognition. He had been building toward this all night. And I knew before he said a word that whatever was on that yellow legal pad wasn't going to be kind. My father lifted his glass. "I want to say a few words about my son." My chest tightened despite myself. Hope is stubborn, even when you've trained it not to be. For 31 years. He began, scanning the room with that practiced showman's gaze. "I've watched Daniel try to figure out where he fits." A few polite chuckles. "He's always been thoughtful." The pause carried weight. Analytical. Another pause. Not exactly decisive. More laughter this time. Louder. Easier. My face felt hot. I could feel the attention shift toward me like heat from a spotlight. There were times, he continued, when I wasn't sure anyone would stick around long enough to deal with him. That landed harder. Claire's hand tightened around mine. Then he raised his champagne flute higher, smile widening into something almost triumphant. "So, tonight," he said, voice bright, "I want to toast my son who finally found a woman so desperate she'd agree to marry him." He laughed. Alone. No one joined him. The silence was immediate and violent. Forks froze midair. Glasses hovered inches from lips. A woman at table 3 covered her mouth. Thomas Hale stared at his plate. Claire's chair shifted beside me. She was about to stand. I placed my hand firmly on her arm. "Don't," I whispered. 60 people looked at me. My father turned toward me, grin still hanging in the air. "Come on," he said lightly. "It's a joke." 5 seconds passed. 5 seconds is a long time when no one breathes. Then I spoke. 2 words. "Sit down." His smile faltered. "Daniel, don't be sit down." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. For the first time in 31 years. My father looked around the room for reinforcement. He found none. And slowly, stiffly, he lowered himself into his chair. The room didn't move. No one reached for a glass. No one whispered. 60 people suspended between discomfort and realization. I stood up slowly. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Measured. The walk from table 1 to the front of Whitmore Hall was maybe 30 feet. It felt like crossing a fault line. I could hear the soft scrape of my shoes against marble. The faint hum of the projector mounted behind the podium. Someone clearing their throat, near the back. My laptop bag was exactly where I'd left it during setup, under the AV table. Practical. Incidental. I unzipped it. Behind me. My father's voice cut through the quiet. "Daniel, what are you doing?" I didn't answer. I opened the laptop, plugged in the HDMI cable. The same projector he'd arranged for his curated slideshow of vacations and staged holidays flickered to life. The screen glowed blue, then white. I turned back toward the room before speaking. My father just told 60 people that no one would willingly marry me. I said evenly. My voice was calm, the same tone I use when presenting findings to a corporate board. I think it's fair that those same 60 people understand who he actually is. I clicked open the folder. The title filled the screen in clean. Black text: Forensic Audit Summary. Unauthorized transfers, Whitmore and Hale contracting. A ripple moved through the tables. Behind me, I heard a sharp intake of breath. Thomas Hale's chair shifted. My father stood halfway up. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. I didn't look at him. I scrolled to the summary page. Dates, amounts, destination accounts, 10 years, clean columns, clinical, professional, and undeniable. The room stopped being an engagement party. It became a witness. The first number on the screen was small enough to seem harmless. 6美元, 750. Then another. 8美元, 200, 7美元, 940. Monthly transfers. Consistent. Clean. Structured to avoid automatic internal review thresholds. I scrolled. The column continued down the page like a metronome. 10 years. At the bottom, the total $842. Lobaisha 47. A sound cracked across the marble floor. Thomas Hale's champagne flute slipped from his hand and shattered. No one flinched this time. They were already bracing. "This is absurd," my father said, standing fully now. His voice had lost its polish. "You don't know what you're looking at." I turned toward him slowly. "I know exactly what I'm looking at." The room absorbed that. "I'm a certified fraud examiner." I continued. "This is what I do for a living." Murmurs began at the back tables. Phones lifted discreetly. Mrs. Hale's hand gripped her husband's sleeve. Thomas didn't look at her. He was staring at the screen, then at my father, then back at the numbers. "You're taking this out of context," my father said quickly, stepping toward Hale. "Those are vendor restructures, tax efficiencies." My accountant advised stop. Hale didn't shout. He didn't need to. One word. Traffic stopping. My father froze. Hale stood slowly. He wasn't unsteady. He was holding himself together. "Is that my signature?" Hale asked, pointing at a line item. "No," I answered calmly. The authorization was internal. Silence. Hale reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He dialed. "Elliot," he said, voice controlled but tight. "I need you at the office Monday morning. First thing, we're initiating a full independent audit." My father stepped closer. "Tom, don't do this in front of everyone. We can sit down privately." "Daniel's upset." I made a joke. Hale looked at him then. Really looked at him. 15 years. Charles. The words landed heavier than any accusation. My father's composure cracked. You're going to take his side, he demanded, gesturing toward me. Hale's jaw tightened. He's not taking sides. I said evenly. He's responding to documentation. I clicked to the next slide. A flowchart appeared, layered LLCs funneling into a holding entity connected to a personal acquisition fund. Lake house down payment. Boat registration. Country club dues. The optics were devastating. A whisper spread across the tables like a weather front. My mother sat perfectly still. Napkin folded. Eyes lowered. My father's voice rose now. Stripped of charm. This is slander. You think you can walk into my event and assassinate my character? I met his gaze without flinching. I plan to present this privately Monday morning. I paused. But you chose the audience. That line stayed in the air. Hale adjusted his jacket. My lawyer will be in touch, he said quietly. Effective immediately. You are not to access company accounts. Do not contact me about this again. He turned to his wife. She was already standing. Before leaving, Mrs. Hale stepped toward me. Thank you, she said softly. I know what that cost you. They walked out together. No one stopped them. One by one. Chairs began to scrape. Coats were collected. Conversations died mid-sentence. The string quartet had already packed up. By the time I closed the laptop, Whitmore Hall felt cavernous. My father stood alone near the bar. Tie loosened. Jacket unbuttoned. The projector light still glowed behind him, casting the audit summary across his back like a shadow he couldn't outrun. For 31 years, he had controlled every room he entered. Tonight, the room had chosen the numbers. And the numbers didn't laugh. Monday morning came faster than I expected. By Osham 0 a.m. An independent forensic firm was inside Whitmore and Hale's offices under court order. Not mine. It couldn't be. The process had to stay clean. By noon, access to company accounts was restricted. By Tuesday, the phone call started. Not to me. To him. Did you hear that engagement party? Apparently there were documents. In a town our size, 60 witnesses is the same thing as a press release. Wednesday afternoon, my father's membership at Ridgeview Country Club was formally revoked. Not suspended. Revoked. 22 years of dues. Charity sponsorships. A holiday galas erased in a single board vote. The man who once bought drinks for the entire bar was escorted out by a manager half his age. 3 contractors who had been seated at his carefully curated front tables quietly severed ties within the week. No dramatic announcements. Just canceled lunches. Unreturned calls. Contracts under review. The slow, deliberate eraser of social capital. The independent audit confirmed everything. And more. Total siphoned $842. Lubaisha Sen. 47 structured over a decade through layered LLCs, disguised as operational disbursements. Civil suit filed in January. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraud. Conversion of partnership assets. A criminal referral was under consideration. Company operations were suspended pending litigation. 12 employees men my father used to brag about like trophies filed for unemployment within a month. The lake house went up for sale in March. I saw the listing online. Same deck, where he used to stand every 4th of July, holding court with a beer in his hand, explaining how he built everything from nothing. Turns out some of it wasn't his. He called me 11 times that first week. I didn't answer. The 12th call went to voicemail. You need to fix this, he said, still issuing directives, still framing consequence as inconvenience. I deleted it. Claire didn't ask who had called. She didn't need to. The man who had controlled every conversation in my life couldn't get his son to pick up the phone. And for the first time, that silence belonged to me. My mother moved out in February. No announcement. Just a small moving truck one afternoon and a neighbor who texted Claire to confirm what everyone already suspected. My father rented an apartment on the east side of town. Alone. He sent one final message 2 weeks later. You chose outsiders over your own blood. I read it twice. Then I understood something I should have understood years earlier. To him, trust was ownership, and anyone who challenged it became an outsider. I deleted the text. There was nothing left to argue. Consequences don't shout. They close doors quietly, one by one. 6 months after the engagement party, Claire and I hosted our own celebration. Not at Whitmore Hall, Not at any venue with marble floors or valet parking. In her parents' backyard. String lights from a hardware store hung between two oak trees. A borrowed grill smoked gently in the corner. A Bluetooth speaker played a playlist we'd built together on a slow Sunday afternoon. 30 guests. Every single one chosen by us. No seating chart. No front tables. No hierarchy. Just folding chairs. Paper plates. And people who actually wanted to be there. Mark gave a toast that lasted 3 sentences and made everyone laugh, the real kind. The kind that comes from the diaphragm. Not obligation. Claire's mother, Susan, hugged me before dinner and said, "You look lighter." She was right. Not happier. Lighter. There's a difference. My mother came. She arrived early, carrying a dish she'd cooked herself. I can't remember the last time she cooked for a gathering. My father had always insisted on catering. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically. Just unarmored. We spoke quietly near the fence line while the others arranged chairs. I started therapy. She said. I nodded. I know. She looked surprised. How you sound different. A small, tentative smile. I should have said something years ago. She said. I know. I replied. We stood there for a moment, in the kind of silence that isn't avoidance. It's rebuilding. I saw what he did. She continued. Every time. I told myself it was his way of motivating you. That it made you stronger. She swallowed. It made you quieter. That one landed. I didn't rush to comfort her. I loved you. She said. I know. I answered. But love without protection isn't enough. She nodded. For the first time in my life. I felt like we were speaking as two adults. Not as a son trying to earn approval and a woman trying to survive marriage. Later that evening, a delivery truck pulled into the driveway. Large white floral arrangement. Card attached. Daniel, integrity isn't loud. It's consistent. Thank you. Thomas, Margaret Hale. I stood there holding the card longer than I expected to. Claire stepped beside me. You okay? I spent 31 years trying to earn one word from him. I said. Proud. I nodded. And it came from someone else. She rested her head against my shoulder. Some men build legacies. She said softly. Some men borrow them. I didn't cry that night. Not the way you see in movies. But something in my chest unclenched. People ask if I regret it. The answer is complicated. I regret that it had to happen at all. I regret that my father forced me into a position where honesty felt like betrayal. But I don't regret telling the truth. I didn't walk to that projector seeking revenge. My plan had been Monday morning. Professional. Private. But when he stood in front of 60 people and tried to shrink me one more time, when he chose performance over respect, I realized something. Silence had been costing me more than confrontation ever would. The silence about how he treated me. The silence about what he was doing to Hale. They came from the same place. Fear. Fear of losing a father. I kept hoping would eventually show up differently. But that version of him existed only in memory fragments. The bike lesson. The rare shoulder clap. The staged pride. You can grieve someone who's still alive. You can miss the version of them that never truly existed. And still choose yourself. Claire and I are getting married next month. Small ceremony. No microphones handed to anyone without permission. My mother will be there. My father won't. Not because I hate him, but because boundaries are not punishments. They are clarity. If you've ever sat at a table shrinking yourself so someone else could feel bigger, I hear this. Setting a boundary doesn't mean you stopped loving them. It means you finally started loving yourself. I'm not a hero. I'm not a strategist who orchestrated a takedown. I'm a man who reached a limit on the wrong night and happened to have the truth in his briefcase. That's all. And sometimes, the truth is enough. This story was created by the Boundaries and Bloodlines team for entertainment purposes only. Do not replicate actions depicted.